School buses are supposed to be simple. Stop, pick up kids, get to school. But for some parents, every tiny inconvenience becomes a full-blown scandal. In this video, we're counting down 55 rage-filled complaints about school bus drivers that are so petty, so dramatic, and so absurd, you'll wonder how these people survive a normal morning. Some are ridiculous, some are painfully real, and all of them are impossible to ignore. 1. One mother called in angry because the bus driver would not let her son bring a full hamster cage on board for show-and-tell support. Not a small carrier, either. She meant the whole setup with the wheel, bedding, food dish, and that sharp little smell every classroom somehow pretends is normal. When the driver said the aisle had to stay clear, she acted like he had crushed a young scientist's dreams. Some parents hear safety rule and translate it as personal oppression. 2. Colin's mother was angry that the driver turned on the heat during a freezing morning route because, according to her, warm air makes him sleepy before math. That was the complaint. Not fumes, not noise, not safety. She genuinely felt the driver should have considered her son's preferred body temperature over the comfort of every other kid on board in wet coats and gloves. Somewhere out there is a bus driver being blamed because a child got too cozy on the way to fractions, which is an incredible level of parental creativity. 3. A father got furious when the driver told his kid that the giant foam volcano for science class had to sit on the floor, not on another student's lap like some unstable monument to bad planning. He said the driver was being negative about creativity, as if papier-mâché and red paint suddenly outrank visibility, balance, and basic common sense. The project made it onto the bus, just not like royalty with its own seating arrangement. Be honest, would you want that thing tipping into your child's face at the first turn? 4. One complaint claimed the driver was rude for not honking outside the house when a student was running late, because the mother said the horn could have been a helpful reminder. Helpful to whom is the question, because to everyone else on the street it would sound like a municipal alarm for a family that still had not found a backpack. The driver was there to pick up kids at the stop, not serve as a personalized morning alert system for people losing a daily fight with the clock. 5. A parent was outraged that the driver would not let her son carry a king-size breakfast smoothie with whipped cream, drizzle, and one of those flimsy domed lids that fail under the slightest pressure. She said it was just a drink, which is technically true if you also call a chandelier just a light. The driver took one look at a packed bus, sharp turns, winter coats, and 50 restless elbows and decided the milkshake experiment could end at the curb. That is not hostility. That is foresight. 6. Colby's grandmother reported the driver for being cold because he would not wait while she adjusted the boy's hair for a picture day photo that was not even happening until third period. She stood there redoing one side, then the other, then stepping back like she was preparing him for a magazine cover while the bus idled at the stop. The driver finally closed the door and moved on, which turned him into the villain of the story instead of the only adult who seemed aware other families also existed. 7. One furious dad called the transportation office to demand a driver be reassigned for intentional psychological torture. The driver's crime was aggressively singing along to pop music, specifically belting out Taylor Swift choruses at the top of his lungs every single morning. The dad said his teenage son was too embarrassed to be seen riding the bus anymore. The district politely informed the father that poor vocal skills are not a fireable offense. 8. A father filed a nasty complaint because the driver told his son to be at the stop 5 minutes earlier after 3 straight near misses in the same week. He took that as a personal insult, like the driver had attacked the family's honor instead of stating the obvious. The route was not changing. The clock was not changing. The only thing being suggested was that maybe, just maybe, the child should not come sprinting down the block while the door is already closing and the red lights are flashing. 9. Sienna's dad complained that the driver had a bad attitude because she asked his daughter to close the umbrella before stepping onto the bus. It was raining. The bus floor was already slick, and the girl was trying to climb the steps holding an open umbrella like she was entering a wedding tent, not public transportation. The driver was preventing a soaked aisle and a poke in somebody's eye, but the father wrote in as though the request had been cruelly anti-weather. That is an incredible amount of drama for 3 seconds of folding fabric. 10. Another parent was furious because the driver cracked open the windows on a rainy morning after the bus started smelling like wet coats, soggy shoes, and somebody's leaking lunch. Her complaint was not about safety, noise, or cold. She said the airflow made her daughter's hair frizz before class pictures, and that the driver should have considered that. That is such a beautifully unreasonable thing to be angry about, because at no point in a normal job description does school bus driver secretly mean guardian of your child's hairstyle. 11. One parent fired off a complaint because the driver closed the door while her son was still on the curb fixing the drawstring on his hoodie, like he was preparing for a portrait session. The bus had already stopped, opened, and waited. But once the door shut, she claimed the driver had rushed him and created a stressful start to his day. He was not abandoned, injured, or even late. He just had to grab the next day's bus with both strings uneven, which apparently qualified as a transportation scandal. 12. One parent called transportation in a fury because the bus stopped a few feet short of the usual spot, which meant her son had to step around a muddy puddle instead of directly onto the sidewalk. Nothing dangerous happened. He did not fall. He did not miss school. His sneaker just picked up a tiny splash, and suddenly the driver was being described like some reckless menace. The complaint read less like a safety issue and more like a formal protest against the existence of weather. 13. A dad complained that the driver called his daughter by her last name from the route sheet instead of using the nickname she prefers at home, and he wrote it like this was some deep identity offense. The driver was checking attendance on a noisy bus, not hosting an intimate brunch with place cards and personalized introductions. The child still got to school, still had her backpack, still sat with her friends. Are we really doing outrage now because a bus driver did not instantly know the family brand guidelines? 14. You would think spreading holiday cheer is a good thing, but not in this upscale suburb. A parent reported a driver for creating a highly hazardous environment because he draped battery-operated string lights around the interior ceiling. The complaint stated the blinking lights were a visual distraction that could cause mass hypnosis among the elementary students. The driver was forced to take down his festive display and replace it with the standard soul-crushing fluorescent bulbs. 15. One mother complained that the driver smiled and waved at neighborhood dogs during the route, but did not always notice her standing at the stop, which she took as proof of bad priorities. Imagine losing a quiet, emotional competition to a golden retriever at 7 in the morning and deciding the school district needed to hear about it. The driver still picked up her son every day without fail. The real injury here seemed to be that a Labrador got more visible enthusiasm than an adult holding a travel mug and a grievance. 16. A parent reported the driver because he asked her son to put his backpack on the floor instead of wearing it on both shoulders while seated like he was ready to evacuate by parachute. She said the request made him feel singled out, even though the backpack was jutting halfway into the aisle and bumping the kid behind him every time the bus turned. That is not singling someone out. That is one adult noticing geometry. 17. Marcus's aunt filed a complaint after the driver told him to stop pounding on the seat in front of him like a drummer auditioning inside a metal shoebox. Her issue was not that he was loud. She said the driver should have redirected him more positively, which sounds lovely until you picture 40 kids, morning traffic, and a rhythm section starting up behind the wheel. Bus drivers are apparently expected to maintain order, protect children, stay on schedule, and also deliver custom feedback in the tone of a preschool mindfulness coach. 18. One father was furious because the driver kept the bus moving past his house while he was backing out of the driveway, and he believed she should have waited so his daughter could hop straight from the SUV to the bus without standing at the stop. He described this as common courtesy, which is a beautiful phrase people use when asking strangers to ignore timing, traffic, and everyone else on the route. The bus is not supposed to orbit your family minivan until your morning choreography is complete. 19. A mother complained that the driver used the stop sign and lights too long at drop-off, saying it made her street look chaotic and embarrassed her in front of neighbors. That is one of those complaints that sounds fake until you remember some people are deeply committed to appearances. The whole point of those lights is to stop cars so children can get off safely. But she was more concerned with curbside aesthetics than moving kids out of traffic. What kind of world are we living in when safety equipment gets reviewed like ugly patio furniture? 20. Another parent wrote in because the driver would not reopen the door after her son got off and then realized he had left his violin on the seat. The driver told him to tell the school office and they would get it back, which is the normal procedure when you are already at the next stop with traffic behind you. But the complaint framed this like some heartless attack on a young musician's future. The violin was not lost, broken, or stolen. It just had to spend 20 extra minutes on a bus without him. 21. One mom complained because the driver stopped at the regular corner instead of directly in front of her house on the first day of school, which ruined the video she was taking for social media. Her son still got on the bus just fine. The only real tragedy was that he had to walk a few extra steps before the camera caught him. The driver was following the route, not helping produce a back-to-school montage with perfect framing, natural light, and a clean emotional payoff. 22. Garrett's father got angry after the driver told him not to walk his son all the way up the bus steps every morning. The man liked to follow the kid up, hand him his lunchbox, adjust his collar, and squeeze in one last lecture while other students waited behind them. When the driver asked him to say goodbye at the curb, he called it disrespectful. Some parents really act like the bus aisle is an extension of their living room and everybody else should just stand there and watch the routine. 23. A parent filed a complaint because the driver asked her daughter to speak louder when saying her name, and she claimed that made the child feel put on the spot. It was a noisy morning, kids were talking over each other, and the driver was simply trying to confirm who had boarded. But somehow, a normal roll call moment turned into a story about public embarrassment. Since when did saying your own name on a school bus become an emotional hardship worthy of administrative review? 24. One father was furious because the driver did not tell him exactly who threw a paper wad during the ride home. His son came back annoyed, and dad expected a full witness statement, names, motive, maybe a courtroom sketch by dinner. The driver had separated the kids, finished the route, and reported the issue to the school, which is what a sane adult would call handling it. But for this guy, anything short of a same-day detective briefing counted as poor communication. 25. Melanie called the bus office angry because the driver used windshield wipers and the spray misted her daughter's jacket while she was standing near the curb on a rainy morning. Not drenched, not soaked, just lightly hit by the kind of mist that exists whenever water and moving vehicles meet in the same zip code. She described it like the girl had been singled out for a drive-by soaking. Be honest, how do you make it to adulthood and still file a formal complaint against rain behaving like rain? 26. A mother complained that the driver did not remind her son to bring his trumpet off the bus when he got to school, so now she felt he was not being supported enough. The kid was in middle school, not 3 years old, and the instrument was literally bigger than his torso. Still, she seemed to believe the driver should track every backpack, lunchbox, hoodie, and band case like a one-person airport lost and found. At some point, responsibility has to belong to the person carrying the trumpet. 27. Naomi's father complained because the driver would not let her walk to the back of the bus after everyone was seated just so she could show her new braces to a friend. He said the driver was making a big deal out of nothing, which is a funny way to describe a moving bus full of kids, backpacks, and sudden stops. The driver told her to stay in her seat and talk later at school, and somehow that became a complaint. Some parents really hear one simple rule and react like their child's social life has been sabotaged. 28. One parent called transportation because the driver would not hold the bus while her daughter ran back inside for a forgotten homework folder. The girl had already boarded, realized she left it on the kitchen table, and wanted a quick dash back to the house. The driver said no and kept the route moving, which somehow got framed as a total lack of compassion. It was a folder, not emergency medicine. Missing one worksheet is unfortunate. Delaying an entire bus is a choice. 29. A father was angry that the driver asked his son to stop opening and closing the window every 30 seconds depending on whether he felt too hot or too cold. Apparently, the boy liked to manage the temperature for his whole side of the bus like a tiny, unstable climate director. When the driver told him to leave it alone, Dad said she was dismissing his comfort. A school bus is already doing a lot. It should not also have to survive one child's personal weather system before first bell. 30. A mother got furious because the driver would not wait while she ran out of the house to hand her son the water bottle he forgot on the kitchen counter. The boy was already on the bus, seated and perfectly fine, but she came sprinting down the lawn waving a giant insulated bottle like the roach should pause for a hydration handoff. When the bus pulled away, she called it rude and inconsiderate. That is an amazing complaint, because no normal person sees a moving bus and thinks, yes, this is the right moment for a personal delivery. 31. One mother got angry because the driver told her son to take one earbud out before crossing in front of the bus after school. She said the music helps him stay calm, which may be true, but the driver needed him to hear instructions in traffic instead of drifting into the street with a soundtrack. That is one of those complaints that sounds almost reasonable for 3 seconds, right up until you remember the adult behind the wheel was asking for basic awareness, not launching a campaign against headphones. 32. Brent tried to hand his daughter a signed permission slip through the bus window after she was already seated, and when the driver said no and kept the route moving, he filed a complaint. He acted like the bus driver had blocked some urgent legal transfer instead of refusing a last-second paper exchange through a narrow opening with 20 kids watching. A school bus is there to move students, not pause at every curb while parents conduct frantic little office work through the glass. 33. A parent complained because the driver told her daughter to stop spraying body mist on the bus after half the front seats started coughing and waving the air around. The girl was not freshening up for a school dance. She was fogging a packed bus at 7 in the morning like she had a fragrance deal to honor before first bell. When the driver shut that down, the mother said he embarrassed her. Honestly, if somebody turns the morning route into a rolling perfume cloud, what is the adult supposed to do? 34. Nolan's mom called furious because the driver would not stop the whole route to search for a retainer case that had slipped under a seat. The driver told Nolan to report it at school, and they would check the bus as soon as the run was finished, which is exactly what a normal adult would say. But she wanted an immediate seat-by-seat recovery mission while traffic stacked up behind the bus. The retainer was not gone forever. It just spent an extra half hour under a vinyl seat instead of living a life of luxury in Nolan's backpack. 35. One father sent in a complaint because the driver told his son to stop practicing the recorder on the morning ride. Not humming, not tapping, not quietly fingering notes in his lap. Actual recorder playing on a crowded bus before 8 o'clock, which should probably count as a public endurance test. When the driver said save it for music class, Dad called it unsupportive. There are few things more revealing than a parent who hears no live recorder performance on the school bus and decides that is the unreasonable position. 36. Mila's mother complained because the driver kept Mila in the front seat after 2 mornings of motion sickness. Mila wanted the back with her friends, and her mother said the front made it look like punishment. That is such a perfect parent complaint because the driver was choosing between a bruised ego and vomit on row 4. He picked the easier cleanup. Be honest, which would you rather deal with before 8 o'clock, hurt feelings or bus sickness? 37. A dad got mad because the driver told his son to stop filming other kids for a prank video on the way home. The boy kept aiming his phone down the aisle, waiting for somebody to trip over a backpack or say something he could post later. The driver shut it down, and suddenly the father was talking about creativity and freedom of expression. That is a very generous way to describe bothering classmates who are just trying to get home. Would you want your kid turned into bus ride content for somebody else's joke? 38. One mother complained that the driver did not call her when her son was not standing at the stop one morning. She expected the driver to wait, pull out a phone, and check whether he had overslept, as if the route came with concierge service for every family running late. The driver waited the usual moment, moved on, and did what bus drivers have done since the invention of the bus. Missing the stop was annoying, sure. Turning it into, "the driver should have called our house," is where it crossed into fantasy. 39. A parent got irritated because the driver would not hold the bus while her daughter changed out of rain boots and into sneakers at the curb. The girl was already there, backpack on, ready to board, but apparently the shoes were not right for the emotional tone of the morning. So everyone else was supposed to sit and watch a full footwear transition beside a yellow bus in light rain. When the driver closed the door and moved on, the mother called it impatient. Most people would call it knowing the difference between a bus stop and a dressing room. 40. Tessa's father complained because the driver would not keep the bus waiting at afternoon drop-off while he finished carrying groceries from the trunk to the porch. His daughter was old enough for the regular stop, it was the normal house, and the bus had other kids to drop off. But he still thought the driver should sit there until he was personally ready for the handoff. When the bus left on schedule, he called it careless. 41. One mom complained because the driver would not hold the bus while she retook her daughter's first day photo. The first picture had another kid walking into frame, the second had bad lighting, and by the third try the driver shut the door and moved on. Her daughter still got on the bus with no problem. The only thing that got hurt was mom's perfect back-to-school post. Some parents forget the route runs on a schedule, not on whatever time their camera finally cooperates. 42. A parent got angry after the driver switched on the interior lights during a dark winter pickup, and suddenly everyone could see her son was still wearing pajama pants under his coat. The driver turned the lights on because it was freezing, still half dark, and kids were climbing aboard in the rain. She treated it like a public humiliation tactic, as if the man had lit up the bus just to expose the flannel. Maybe the bigger issue was sending a middle schooler out dressed like he gave up before sunrise. 43. Devin's father actually complained because the driver told him to stop creeping alongside the bus in his SUV so he could keep waving at Devin through the window. The bus was moving, kids were turning around to wave back, and the driver finally motioned for him to back off and let the route continue. Dad called that rude. At what point does a goodbye turn into a low-speed motorcade that everyone else on the road has to witness before breakfast? 44. One mother filed a complaint because the driver left after her daughter got tangled in the dog leash at the stop. The family had brought the puppy along for the walk, the leash wrapped around the mailbox, and instead of sending the girl straight to the curb, Mom stood there trying to untwist the whole situation while the bus waited. When the driver finally pulled off, she called it heartless. The bus route did not fail that morning. A golden doodle with terrible timing did. 45. A parent was furious because the driver would not wait while she pinned a corsage onto her son's jacket before the 8th grade dance. She picked the bus stop for this project, with kids boarding, traffic building, and one embarrassed boy standing there while she wrestled with ribbon and a straight pin. The driver told him to get on and deal with the flowers later. She said he ruined a special moment. That special moment, apparently, was arts and crafts next to a running school bus. 46. A bizarre report from Georgia involved a driver who was supposedly running an illegal side hustle. A parent noticed the driver handing small paper bags out the window to random people at stop signs and accused him of dealing contraband on the clock. Local police actually got involved, only to discover the driver was just delivering Avon beauty products to his regular customers along the route. Talk about maximizing your morning commute time. 47. Talia's mother was outraged after the driver moved her daughter to the front for one morning because she kept turning around, yelling across seats, and working the whole bus like a campaign stop before first period. The complaint was that the driver humiliated her in front of other students. which is a dramatic way to describe being told to sit where an adult could actually see you. Some parents really treat the mildest correction like a civil rights case with a backpack and glitter pen. 48. This one is a classic battle of the thermostat. A group of parents started an online petition to fire a driver in Minnesota who cracked the windows during a harsh snowstorm, accusing her of trying to freeze the kids to death. The driver argued that with 40 wet winter coats thawing out inside a heated metal tube, the windows had to be open just to let them breathe. Have you ever smelled a bus full of damp teenagers? Or would you side with the freezing parents on this one? 49. A mother completely lost her temper and filed a formal grievance because the driver refused to sit outside her house and honk the horn until her teenage son woke up. She claimed the driver was being incredibly spiteful for pulling away after exactly 3 minutes of waiting at the curb. The school board had to gently explain that a 40-foot yellow bus is a public utility, not a personal chauffeur service equipped with a snooze button. 50. Renee called the district upset because the driver would not let her daughter cross in front of the bus until she was given the hand signal, and apparently those extra few seconds felt controlling. That is the kind of complaint that makes you stare at the wall for a minute. The driver was doing exactly what bus drivers are trained to do, so children do not step into traffic half awake and distracted. But Renee described the moment like her child had been publicly managed by a tyrant instead of briefly told when it was safe to walk. 51. A completely unhinged email arrived at a principal's office after a little girl saw a spider crawling on the third-row seat. The mother demanded that the entire vehicle be taken out of commission, completely fumigated, and professionally deep-cleaned before her daughter would ever step foot on it again. The transportation director actually had to send a response stating that they simply cannot control the local insect population hanging out at the morning bus stop. 52. In Michigan, a driver got so sick of the endless middle school gossip that she instituted a total vow of silence rule. Anyone caught whispering rumors was immediately assigned the seat directly behind her for the rest of the week. Several parents banded together to complain that this violated their children's fundamental right to free speech. Do you think the driver was acting like a tyrant? Or is silencing middle school drama worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize? 53. An angry dad showed up right at the bus depot, demanding the immediate return of his son's precious science project. He accused the driver of stealing a moldy potato battery that the kid had deliberately left under a back seat for 3 days. The driver had already thrown the rotting, foul-smelling vegetable into the dumpster, but the dad still threatened to sue the entire district for destruction of private property. 54. A mother in Nevada wanted a driver's head on a platter for using the bus intercom system like a stand-up comedy stage. When kids forgot their backpacks or tripped up the stairs, the driver would drop a sarcastic deadpan comment over the loudspeakers for everyone to hear. The kids actually found it hilarious and looked forward to the daily roasts, but the mom claimed it was creating a highly toxic environment of mockery. 55. We end with the absolute pinnacle of irrational anger. A wealthy parent in California filed a formal petition to have the school buses repainted in a neutral, muted beige tone. Her argument was that the bright neon yellow color was a severe eyesore that clashed with the high-end aesthetic of her exclusive gated community. The school board literally laughed her out of the room, reminding her that national safety regulations do not care about her neighborhood's color palette. Those were 55 of the most rage-filled complaints about school bus drivers, and somehow they kept getting worse. The wildest part is that every one of these meltdowns started with something small and ended like a personal crisis. Which complaint was the dumbest, and which one sounded most believable to you? Drop it in the comments, hit like if this made you laugh, and subscribe for more unbelievable complaints people actually turn into drama.